everyone, and welcome to Inside Leather History, a Fireside Chat in Tromso, Norway. Today I'm sending special thanks to Arctic Pride and the Polar Museum for hosting the chats. I'm Doug O'Keefe. I'm the host and producer of the chats, which are a program of the Leather Archives and Museum in Chicago. So today I have the honor of being able to interview Per Helge, who is the creator of Arctic Pilot and Mr. Leather Norway 2019. Hello and welcome.
Hi, Doug. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Let's start right at the very beginning. Tell us a little bit about where you're from, a little about your family.
Well, I'm born and raised here in Tromso, which is up in Arctic Norway. My family's been living on this tiny island for 300 years, something like that. So I feel I have really deep roots in this area, which is why I'm not inclined to move anywhere else, but rather explore the world with the perspectives that we get here from the north.
What are those perspectives? I think the international audience would like to know a little bit about that.
Well, coming from a small place, you learn a lot about, bigger places, but I think sometimes my most important luggage when I travel or experience other cultures is the small and simple ways that we have in the north.
Such as?
Well, don't make it a problem if it isn't a problem, and make sure you dress warm enough.
What would you like the international audience to be able to know, though, about the Arctic, about Tromso, about Norway?
Well, that it exists, and that you can very well survive here. It's not as cold as you might think. We have a rich, vivid culture. We are a very open-minded and friendly town. Tromso is known for being progressive in Norway, but being sort of a capital of the Arctic. We are also a city that has been very vivid in its cultural life. We're really outgoing. We're even nicknamed Paris of the North for some reason. It might be because of all the cafes and the culture that we have here. And you know, Norway is accessible. It's here. It's friendly. Come and have a look. Yeah.
What would you recommend people see when they come here?
Well, Tromso has its attractions in terms of museums and things that tourists typically do, but I think the most important thing in the north is to find some space to sort of find the peace and the tranquility that our nature offers. One of the most significant things that surrounds Tromso for me is all the mountains. Because a mountain, being this enormous mass of stone, is so stable. It feels very safe, and it's like the mountains will just be here no matter what. And sometimes I even find comfort in that. So the nature, the light, the northern lights, of course, the midnight sun and all that, but just this peace and the grandeur of nature, which you can go out and experience as an individual without being disturbed by the hustle and bustle of a city and civilization. That's possible to do just outside Tromso, yeah?
You're the descendant of a king. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, I am. Several kings, in fact,
okay.
if the family history has this correct. But way back in history, back in 872, King Harald with the fair hair conquered the last of the small Norwegian chieftains and sort of assembled Norway into one kingdom, and we've been one monarchy ever since. Now Harald did that in a somewhat unusual way. For every little kingdom or sort of that he conquered, he married a young girl. He had at least 19 wives and 21 legitimate sons. And I think today about 20% of Norway's population are actually descendants of King Harald the Fair.
I should think with that many, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I wish his genetics had left me with a bit more of fair hair. That's how it goes, yeah.
You served in the Norwegian army. Now, I can tell you, the international audience, anybody watching this video, is going to be absolutely enthralled by that, because what gay man does not want to get a hold of someone in the army? Tell us about that.
Well, Norway has a general conscription, so all young men go to serve in the army. Well, that's at least the starting point. And way back in the early 90s, when it was my turn, I was called on. I wasn't feeling particularly confident about it. I didn't think I neither had the physique nor the mentality really to go into the army. The idea of guns and war and all that was quite scary. And also, of course, being a closeted gay person. There were no openly gay people in the army, as far as I knew by then. So it was a little scary. The army was offering me an interesting service, starting out as a military policeman, then moving on to what's known as the welfare office, where we sort of care for the soldiers and make sure that they are thriving. So I felt that was a meaningful and sort of useful way of serving, and I was happy to get that position.
How did that happen?
Well, I had to enlist and get in as a standard recruit, and when all the basic training was done, guns, gas masks, all the thing, I applied for this office job, and I was lucky to get it. And I have to say, after 324 days in the army, I was dismissed just before Christmas. And Christmas holiday passed. I just wanted to go back because I really thrived there. I thought it was a nice place to be, meaningful job, nice colleagues, and a lot of hot guys, really.
So I know the audience is going to want to know this. How was the action in the military?
Well, in terms of being gay, I was not open, and I didn't dare to be open at the time. I regret that today, but it was more difficult 30 years ago. But what I did, because my welfare office station, we were also in charge of the library that all the soldiers could come and use. And I got in touch with organizations such as what's now today known as the FRI, the big LGBT organization in Norway, and asked them to send leaflets and information. But I just put out in these sort of information racks. I made sure that we subscribed to the queer newspaper in Norway. So I just sort of sneaked it in there. And all these little pamphlets about how to be gay and coming out and gay support and helplines, they disappeared one by one from the library. So I knew there were others. I never met anyone that I identified as gay. They were probably there, and I hope I helped them a little bit.
So no action at all?
I can tell you that
Yes.
there are a lot of fantasies going on, but actually my sexual debut happened 4 years after my army service.
Okay.
But we had, of course, a lot of nature surrounding the camp, and me being in this office job, I was not really in the sort of physical education group with the others. I had to do my own little jogging and training, which was very often jogging into the forest, climbing up on this big rock, laying flat out in the sun and having a good wank off. So it was a bit of fun.
So take us back a step there. Do tell us a little bit about your coming out. How did that happen for you?
Oh, that was a long process, yes. I discovered being gay when I started in high school at the age of 16 here in Tromso, simply because I fell in love with a boy in school. I couldn't tell him, of course. I couldn't tell anyone. But I was on the brink of coming out several times. And again, it was just that last little inch of courage that I didn't have. But I made many good friends. I was able to start to talk with my friends about, love, girls, sex, the body, all these things that are happening. And I've always been a guy who wants to have more knowledge. So I used the public library here in Tromso a lot. Read all the books about it. This is before the internet anyway. So I discovered that sometimes more or less strangers came to me and asked, Per, you know something about this? Is this normal and all that? So I felt like a little sort of sexologist already at a young age. But some of my friends, I think being of a sort of a masculine, how would you say, image,
Yes.
I just sent out the message that I was straight. No one guessed I was gay. And that started to feel troublesome because I felt I was betraying everyone. I was sort of lying by not coming out. And that became a great pressure. But it was hard to gather the courage, and in the end I wrote a letter to a good friend who was studying in Canada at the time. He had been writing to me and asking, how are you with the girls, Per? He was straight, so I would just go, I have to tell him. It took me 24 pages of handwriting before I got to the actual point. I was so, I really exhausted everything else I could tell him about, my studies, my homework. I think I came down to, my mother has bought new curtains. And then I was like, okay, now you have to break the news to him. And then sending that letter off was sort of giving me a little bit of delay for the answer to come back.
Sure.
But I knew the letter had fallen down in the letterbox, right? So it was in a way already out there in the open. And that gave me a little push so I could start coming out to a few friends here in Tromso. Everyone was very supportive, so this wasn't bad in any way. And the year after, I was part of forming a gay student group here in Tromso, wow. And being elected for the student society board and so on. And my friends came over to me afterwards and said, Per, do you realize you just came out in front of 150 students here? And I was like, yeah, guess I did, yes. So, and then it has felt fine ever since. But it was a high threshold,
I can't help but ask, when you were in the local public library looking for information, what did you find?
Well, I think I found sort of general books about sexual health, things written for youngsters. There was a lot about female bodies and, the menstruation period and all that, yes, lots of biology. All the pictures were just cut through sections with Latin names on them, so it wasn't that exciting really. And I found very little information about being queer or gay or being on the side of things. But some of that could be picked up through the magazines issued by the LGBT organization in Norway. And one of my best sources of information became actually the university library, which seemed to have a more liberal take on this. At least they had more information there.
How was the scene, though, in Tromso at that time? I mean, were you able to go out and do anything, go to any clubs?
Tromso has a lot of clubs and cafes, but still to this day there is no designated gay place, and today, that's maybe not necessary because gays are so welcome everywhere.
Yeah.
There were these sort of organizations, there were certain nights where restaurants were booked for a gay audience. I didn't really go much or understand that much, but I more or less sort of did it myself. Being a member of the student society board within the university and seeing all the various clubs there for various interests. There was the photographers club, and there was choirs for singers, there was the wine tasting group and whatnot. And I thought, why can't we have a gay group? And a few other guys had the same idea, so we got together, we formed a little gay group, we started spreading out information, not in big posters, we had small little printed notes. And then we went around with sticky tape and we stuck them on the inside of the, the sort of cabinet doors in the public toilets. So that if you wanted to take that little note, you could do it in absolute privacy. But it did work. We got our own little office from the student society, which was so small that we called it the closet. And we felt that being in the closet is safe, so you can always come and be with us. And I made many new friends. We did discussions, we had film nights. We even had our own little library that I set up.
Fantastic.
Again, this is before the internet. And then we started throwing parties. And we soon attracted quite a large crowd because the gay parties were known for having the best music. Right.
Hey, it's the same even now, isn't it? Let's get to the real fun part of this. How were you introduced to the Leather-Kink scene?
In two ways, I think. One was through the literature I was able to get, not just from the public library, but when you started going to the newsstand and buy some of those magazines from the top shelf, behind that black,
Yes.
I started finding drawings by Tom of Finland.
Yeah.
And they were much more interesting and speaking to me a lot more than sort of any pornographic photograph has ever done. The masculinity and the happiness that comes from being a sort of confident leather or fetish man. So that was one way into it. I was dreaming about becoming a bit more like those men or being among that kind of men. On the other side, I started going to various pride events here in Scandinavia. The first was in Copenhagen in '96, later on Stockholm. And in 2001, a friend of mine in Stockholm said, "Hey, why don't we go to that leather club?" And I just sort of froze immediately. It was like half of my brain was saying yes, 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 yes. And my mouth said something like, "I'm not quite sure." Because I still had the idea, will I be raped? What's gonna go on down there? It sounded so sinister. But I was able to go and see how friendly and warm and open people are, and how relaxed and how wonderful, and even in a way, how beautiful people are when they're able to just be themselves and dress and party the way they want to. But I had some interesting experiences. One that I think learned me about customer service. At SLM Stockholm, I went up to the counter to just get a beer, and beside me all of a sudden stands this tall, twinkish guy in just a little pair of leather shorts and some collar. And he was asking for a beer as well, and the bartender asked, "Okay, so is that for Sven?" And yes, it's for Sven. Okay, so we go back, and then he says, "And can I have a small Coke as well, please?" And the bartender just looks at it and says, "Are you given permission to buy that Coke?" And I was like, "What is this? You can't treat customers like that. That's not right." But later on it dawned to me that that was exactly the right thing to do, of course, and this boy had to go back and get permission to buy his Coca-Cola, which he then got, right.
I can't help but wonder, how did your friend know about this leather club?
Well, he was probably part of the leather scene in Stockholm already. So one of the many friends you make during a pride, just because we are in the parade together or something. But I immediately felt at home, and I have to say that SLM Stockholm became really sort of a kink or leather home place for me for many years, and I try to visit them every year during the pride still.
Was there anything that was surprising to you, shocking to you in that journey?
Apart from the customer service?
Apart from
No, I don't think so. Some of the ways people want to express themselves, some of the clothing or even actions that people do, the way people play in these leather clubs were new to me. I've seen outfits that have made me think, I have no clue how they can think that is sexy, but it's not for me to judge. It's like, I'm feeling the freedom. It's like, okay, I'm allowed to wear this and feel this is sexy. So obviously they are allowed to wear whatever they want. And I just have to remind myself that they are feeling as sexy as I am right now. And then we meet in that, because it's not really about what you're wearing, but how you're wearing it and what it makes you feel like. So, but sometimes it's only imagination that limits what you can possibly wear. And we're good at pushing those limits as well in leather clubs, aren't we?
When we were preparing for this interview, you told me that you were the first Mr. Leather Norway after a very big break in the contest cycle. What was going on? Why was there this break? How did you come to the contest?
Well, why the break came there is really something we should ask the Leather Club more about, but what I've heard is that there was no interest in the contest anymore. It was hard to find anyone who would volunteer to take part in it. So there was a long break, several years. I've been traveling, going to prides here and there. I started meeting with these guys with the sashes, and I understood that there is something called Mr. Leather here and there.
Yes.
And okay, they are like ambassadors. That seems to be a fun thing. But I also realized that, okay, it's not for me, because we don't have a Mr. Leather in Norway. And I didn't think much more about it. Really, not until someone in Helsinki, I think it was, asked me, so are you Mr. Leather Norway? I said, no, we don't really have that. But then all of a sudden I got a phone call from one of the board members in the Scandinavian Leatherman Oslo, my club, and they said, we're thinking about starting the Mr. Leather competition again in Norway. Would you run for that if we do it? They just wanted to make sure they had some candidates.
Sure.
And I said, yes, I'm starting to understand what it is, and I have an idea of how I would like to fulfill that role or fill that title if I should get it. So I'm happy to do that. And in 2019, we were 5 candidates, which was nice. We went through the entire thing with interviews and a jury, and then presenting ourselves to the audience in the club, and having all the attendance there voting for us and so on. And I was lucky. I won.
What were your thoughts and feelings on that?
I was very happy. It was. I'm not a very competitive person, but right at midnight, the night when it was announced that it's Per Helge, I really felt yes. So that was, yeah. I was not humble that minute.
At least you're honest.
Yeah, but it was great, and I think the surprising thing was that you could win this title not just by sort of being the, how can I phrase this? It wasn't just about becoming this figurehead and the image and doing some sort of job for the club. I wasn't employed by the board or the jury. I really felt the warmth and how everyone in the crowd actually wanted me to do this.
Yes.
So that gave me a great support right from the very beginning.
But your boyfriend missed the contest. What was going on with that?
He was photographing apples in Bulgaria at the time.
Apples in Bulgaria.
Yeah. It just so happened that my boyfriend is a chef, but he also wants to be able to take really good photographs of food, which you do for marketing. So we decided to have a summer holiday, which was actually traveling to Bulgaria, exploring the country. Then he went for this 2-week course in how to photograph food. They started with an apple. I think it was a bit more advanced in the end, maybe apple and an orange. And then I went home a little bit ahead of him because I had to prepare for the contest. He was meant to be there right when the contest party started, but then there was a flight delay. Yeah, so he came in the morning after.
Picking right back up, you were the first Leatherman to march in the Arctic Pride Parade. Tell us how that happened.
Well, I think I was, yes. The Arctic Pride has happened here in Tromso for, I think it's 7 years now. So it's a relatively new thing. And when it started up, I was already a Leatherman, really knowing that this is something I like, and I wanted to promote leather culture. I didn't really know about any other Leathermen in Tromso, a few guys who had a leather jacket, but maybe not much more than that. So, but I decided, okay, I have to show who I am. And when you put on a full leather outfit, it is in a way the same as carrying a pride flag. Right? So I felt my outfit was my flag, in a way. And just decided to go with that, came down and marched and waved. But felt a little bit alone. I was clearly the only one. I was marching once with members or employees of the church here in Tromso. They were very welcoming, but then this little idea occurs to me that I need to bring in more Leathermen to Tromso because we need to expand the contingent of Leathermen in the Arctic Pride Parade. So, okay, how can I invite people? How can I make it attractive for them to come to Tromso? I can ask them to come and take part in Pride, but maybe it's not enough just marching a parade. And then the idea of creating a leather event was born.
Tell us all about that.
Yeah, well, going to big prides like Stockholm or Copenhagen, or of course Folsom in Berlin and all these huge things, there are such vast events that I realized that this is not something that I can do on my own. But then by visiting much smaller events, particularly in Finland, I have to say, the Finns have really inspired me. I learned that, but you don't have to have a huge administration. You can invite people, you just sort of give them a little timetable, suggest things to do, and those who want to come can come and join, and it's not really more difficult than that. You are a bunch of friends exploring a certain location together. So I thought, okay, let's do that. Let's invite some people and see. And in 2018, I sent out invitations. I didn't announce this openly on the net or anything. I want just my friends to be here so I can test this out.
Okay.
Hence the name The Pilot, because it was sort of a pilot project.
Yes,
really.
Arctic Pilot.
Yeah.
There we go.
And yeah, people came. It was very nice. It was good sharing with them a few of the things we can do in Tromso, some of which are quite different from what you typically do in a leather event. But I had to do something because there's no leather bar or club in Tromso.
So what do you do here that's different from any other leather event?
Well, we go out at night and look at the northern lights, of course. Yeah. We have a nice husky dog farm, so we've even gone dog sledding in the snow. And yeah, we try to visit a museum or two, and then I give a little bit more substance by inviting everyone to the City of Tromso Town Hall. And let them know about the city politics when it comes to anti-discrimination and sexual diversity. I'm very proud of the fact that my hometown is so actively working with this, and we have politicians who unanimously voted on this plan to counteract any sort of homophobia and so on. It doesn't say anything specific about Leathermen in the plan as such, but I think it soon will, because I've been bringing my leather friends to the City Hall for 4 consecutive years.
Yes.
And now we're even starting to feed ideas from us to the city of Tromso and things that they could, to improve their plan further on.
Yeah, I do have to say that was very fascinating to be able to go and see that while I was here. It was really very, very interesting.
Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping to inspire others, and that people who come from, particularly people who come from countries where being gay is still difficult, will know that there is a chance we can, move our politicians, given time, to actually do these kind of things. And there are political documents, official plans that can be shared with politicians in their home country.
When we prepared for this interview, you told me that flags are very important to your event, to your parade. Why? Tell us about that.
Well, in Norway we celebrate our own Constitution Day with a lot of flags. Several countries do. And being a Norwegian, I'm used to marching the streets as a kid, waving flags, right? Now I want to show Tromso that Leatherman exists all over the world, and also that people are interested in coming here and learning about our place. So in addition to bringing all my leather friends here and showing them my hometown, I'm also showing the leather guys off to Tromso.
Yes.
And just to underline how much of an international, global, and in a way boundary-less brotherhood we are, I like to introduce as many flags as possible. So I always ask the Arctic pilots to bring the flag of their home country or their club. And it looks very festive. There's this thing, we do it sometimes with big flags during our Constitution parades. There's something known as the Castle of Flags, which is seen as very festive, but also held in very great respect. So by marching the way we do with those flags, we are also actually increasing respect for the leather culture in a way. Yeah. And then also I've been a flag nerd all my life. My school books were full of all, I colored all the flags of the world, and yeah, so.
Well, how many foreign countries are generally represented in your weekend here in Tromso?
Around 10, sometimes a bit more. This year we're up to 16.
Oh.
So that's very good, but we've been around 10 to 12, yeah. And then of course countries, sometimes I prefer to say nations, because then I can include also the Sami people, the indigenous people to this part of Scandinavia.
Yes.
And yeah, so, but around that number.
Now, in your opinion, from your point of view, what responsibilities does a Leatherman have to a community? And what advice can you offer leather people who may be watching this video?
Oh well, huge question, but of course we Leathermen are very visible. And we're very lucky because we have a fetish and a way of dressing that we can actually show in the streets. Not all fetishes are suitable for being outside the bedroom or the dungeon or the kitchen or, well, but so we're lucky in that way. We can actually march the streets and we can be very visible, and that gives us a responsibility to also represent and open doors and raise awareness for a wider scope of fetishes, I think.
Yes.
I, even as a gay leatherman, is beginning to think that I should probably even promote straight fetishism. And what I mean by that is I sometimes, you know, get emails and things from people I don't know. One of them came from a straight married cis woman here in Tromso with kids, and you know, her life was very sort of organized, but she had some kinks and fetishes, I don't know which, but she told me that you are lucky, Per, because you being a fetishist, that is so accepted in the gay world.
Yeah.
But she felt that she could never talk about her kinks to her other female friends, right? Because that would break the idea of the perfect housewife, or well, that sort of standard life that she was living. And I'm thinking, okay, so it doesn't really matter who you love. Isn't that what we've been saying all the time, right?
Yeah.
You can love whoever you like.
Right.
And then we are adding, and kinks are cool, right? Kinks are okay. So we should probably start also to think about, at least, the fetishists that are outside the gay community. Not probably going to be our main priority, but maybe we can sort of, you just embrace them sometimes and bring them into our parades and festivals whenever suitable.
What's your favorite kink? Sorry, what is your favorite kink?
Well, obviously I like my leather, both because it looks cool, but also the material as such is really sexy. So it's been something there since the first day when I crawled onto that leather sofa where the sun had been shining and warming up the leather for a while. It was smelling wonderful. Yeah, leather as such is good. I don't know if I have a particular activity or anything. I'm a little bit into bondage maybe, and so we're just sort of exploring. And then again, I just love the nature around Tromso, and going out in the middle of a summer day, finding a mountain all to myself and just completely undressed and just feel that I'm sort of an organism in the big big picture of nature is also a wonderful thing. It can also be arousing. I don't know if it's a kink really, but but it gives me a good feeling about myself. Yeah.
How do you want to be remembered by the community?
Probably for less talkative than I am.
Oh, we see the audience reaction, don't we?
Yeah, it would be nice to be remembered as a guy that actually allowed a few other voices to come through. But I don't know, I think one of my talents is to talk and communicate. I come from a long family of teachers, and I always have this urge to share everything with, well, almost everything. Well, in the gay community, everything, yes. I sometimes say the meaning of life is to share it with others. Not just your spouse or your friends, but also the knowledge you have about life and the philosophy and the thoughts and how we view the world from many different ways, right? So I like to do that. And if Tromso can remember me as that university museum guy who also ran around in leather and started creating a leather crowd coming to Tromso every year, that's nice. It's hard to sum up in one word, but you know, the gentle talkative guy who probably made some people feel a bit better about themselves. And then I know there are some few people that might remember me for creating an event which was a safe space for them to come into for the first time. The Arctic Pride of this year, we've had several visitors coming as far away as from the United States, like yourself, of course. But for you, very well-known, very confident leatherman, to travel from Chicago to Tromso, is not so difficult. It's a long distance, but it's something you'd like to do. But those few guys who came to our fetish party this weekend, coming in with a regional bus for 1 hour, the journey for them from their little home village to Tromso was a much longer than for you to come from Chicago and here.
Yes.
And there might be a few persons there that could remember that, yeah, it was Per starting that off. So opening those doors, I didn't see much lettermen in the street when I grew up, but yeah, if someone can remember me that he was that letter guy, he helped me understand who I am, that would be wonderful.
What's the biggest misconception about you?
No one has told me, I think, really. I don't know. That's a good question. That's hard to say. I don't know. Maybe it is the classic thing that goes with many lettermen, that we are very tough and hard and brutal and can't be spoken to and don't have any emotions. That would not be me, no.
Per Helge, I would like to thank you for an amazing interview for Inside Leather History, a Fireside Chat. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Tromso, Polar Museum, Arctic Pride, everyone. We've got a couple of minutes. If there's a question, we can maybe take one or two. Anybody have a question?
Well, what's the dates for next year?
They will be determined in January, I think, John. I'll let you know. Yeah.
More of an observation and then when you think back to the fears that you had coming out, and I think it's common as well for a lot of people into leather or fetish that it's almost a second coming out.
Yes.
And I'm interested to know the people that you met coming from the regions, had they already identified as being as gay with a fetish, or was it like all mixed into one pot?
A bit of both, because coming out as gay, the word gay triggered people's stereotypes. And I was not fitting into the feminine or the effeminate stereotype. So then people were starting making jokes that, you're probably going to drag home one of these big biker guys. And I was thinking, yes, that would be nice, wouldn't it? So I don't think I surprised people that much when I started bringing out the letter side of myself. But not everyone had thought of that, no.
Another observation is that I find it interesting that fear that you expressed, and probably most of us have, when we came out at first, it still exists, even in a community, quite a small community, which is unique to have this openness. I don't think I've ever experienced that before. That those fears still exist, so it kind of inspires me and everybody here, I think, to see this activity happen in such a small community, because it happens everywhere. We all think we've progressed to a point where it's accepting, but I think that fear is always inside us initially.
Yes. Well, thank you. And there is one thing which is true for all gay or queer people, and that's the fact that we all have to come out of the closet at some point, to ourselves and then to our surroundings and so on. So it really is, and that's something everyone share. It could be a good experience, it could be a bad experience, it could be both, but that is something that everyone has to go through, and that's one of the sort of core life events that we build our community on. Because whenever I meet another gay person, it's like, okay, I know you've gone through the same.
Yeah.
Right. So that is something that really shapes us.